Alright, so we're going to talk a little bit about Bugout Cash. Now, I have been working off and on a short series of videos about silver stacking for survival. I'm now looking at this as like some kind of major investment portfolio type thing. So if somebody thinks I'm pushing metals as an investment portfolio, I am not. In fact, I think it's really not that good of an investment. I think that as a survival prep, it serves a purpose. It is relatively inexpensive as a survival prep, and that once you spend the money on it, it's still worth what you spent. A lot of other survival prep stuff, once you spent the money on it, it's gone, especially training. You know, if you spend money on training, you're not really getting that back if it is training which you're only going to use in an emergency and not professionally. Okay, professional training is an investment. Emergency training is you spent money, you know, hope you had a good time doing it. On the silver type stuff, you know, it's usually break even. If you look at the averages, yeah, it goes up, it goes down. When it goes down, you buy in. Once you've done the prep, it's done. There's no learning curve on it. Now, when you're talking about bug out money, that is a little bit of a different game, and that's one of the reasons I've decided to make this in a different video. So, first thing we're going to do is, under most circumstances, for bug out cash, silver's off the table. It really is. Probably not as likely to be your bug out cash. It's difficult to spend it in emergency. It's difficult to get people just on the street to accept it. You've probably seen Mark Dice's video where he went around the beach in Orange County on a boardwalk out there and tried to sell a gold coin to people, and they put him off. You know, the vast majority put him off. If you went around with a silver coin and tried to spend that, let's say in a restaurant, you know, $10, $15 meal, you throw a silver coin on there, there's your tip, there's everything, they're probably going to think you're crazy. If you put that on there as just the tip, okay, you know, like if you went and you had a big dinner and you lay that on there as a tip, maybe they'll accept it, you know, maybe they'll have a sense of humor, maybe not. I've known people that do that, you know, throw a coin up there as a tip on a restaurant tab, especially back when it was down around $3 to $7 an ounce. Nowadays, I don't think you're going to see that as much. But given a normal economy, the silver, the gold, that's probably off the table as far as bug out spending. In the alternative post-collapse economy, then yeah, that's the new currency. So for bug out spending, you're pretty much talking bug out cash. And you figure what your commute distances are, what your normal commute cost is, what your distance is to a bug out location or a likely bug out location or a safe zone. Generally speaking, the way I look at this, it's 2 days travel, 1 tank of gas. You know, what does it take for you to live in relative comfort, staying at a hotel, 2 days travel, 1 tank of gas, or if it's really smooth traveling, 2 days of travel, 2 tanks of gas, 3 tanks of gas, however that's going to go. It depends on the fuel capacity of your vehicle, travel speeds. Obviously, there's a lot of things in there. But generally speaking, that should get you a good distance away from any kind of bad disaster zone. If you drove 300 miles, which is the average vehicle, to get 1 full tank of gas away from, let's say, New Orleans during the Katrina thing, you were most likely away from the disaster zone. If you drove 600 miles from there, you were probably away from the zone of effect for the disaster. Now, how you're going to live when you get to that location or what's going to transpire beyond that is kind of hard to say. But what it took to bug out, 2 tanks of fuel, you're about there. Whether that's your vehicle or a bus ticket or some other way of getting around, they all start to factor into each other. So what I look at is your get home bag, your get home type situation. If you work in a city, and a lot of people do because that's where you can probably make the most money, how much money does it take to get to your car? You know, did you park your car at a commuter lot and then take the bus or the commuter train in? Portland has that. Several parts of the San Francisco Bay Area have that. You have bus, trains, ferries, things like that in a lot of areas. New York, Portland, Seattle, you know, things like that. I don't know if Seattle's all that big on trains, but I know they have some buses there. But you may not be around your car. You may have to get to your car. You may have to pay an Uber driver or hitch a ride or something like that. So what I look at is that if I'm away from my car and I'm in the city on a job of some sort, you got to have 40 bucks in your pocket to at least get to your vehicle. If you're really going to get home from there, what's the maximum? If you're a long commute type person, I think that you may have to look at the possibility that, you know, your car was part of the disaster, it got blown up, it got squashed by a falling building or something like that. Maybe got stolen. You know, a stolen vehicle, you parked it out in a residential neighborhood, maybe somebody towed it, maybe somebody stole it. How are you going to get home on that long commute? That's where I'm looking at. You're going to have 200 bucks available. Now, whether that's cash, credit, or something like that, I personally like the idea of just the $100 bills. And the reason is that when you break a $100 bill, you know you broke a $100 bill. If you've got these new style hundreds with, you know, all of the security type stuff in these bills, they're so difficult to counterfeit that if somebody wants to go through all of the offensive and degrading rigmarole of, you know, oh, we got to check if we're counterfeit, we got to do this, we got to do that, you know, it's still 100 bucks. It's still, somebody's going to break that bill. And if you carry that in small bills, you just got to realize, you know, where's the personal discipline on that? Are you capable of breaking the small bills without biting into them all the time? That's a personal choice. I personally like to keep the hundreds in reserve in a wallet, and if I need to break them, I'll break them. And if you're in what you think would be a potential bug out situation, break them right away. You go to the convenience store, you break a $100 bill. You go to the next convenience store, you break another $100 bill. And then you break those immediately into the bug out or the survival situation. But before that, might as well just carry the hundreds. So what I look at is about 200 bucks to get home. And that's usually going to work for most people. Now, here's the other thing about stashing money in a car. I'm not going to advise it because cars can get broken into, but then you can have elaborate hiding spots in a car. If a car gets towed, a lot of times you can bribe somebody, get to the car, say, yeah, I've got cash in the car, you give them the cash, you get your car out of impound, you got cash in there. On the other hand, if they get a clue that you keep cash in the car, they ransack your car, make you sign a piece of paper that says they're not liable for it, and then keep the cash and charge you extra on top of that. So it depends on the situation. But I think leaving resources in the car that you can use on a bug out situation is not such a bad thing. One of the ways you can do that is with cards, prepaid cards. This is a prepaid fuel card from Safeway. One of the cool things about this is that when you prepay this, you actually don't pay a premium for that. So if you go to a Safeway affiliated gas station and spend this card, you didn't pay a $5 premium to buy the gas card. And this is really good for handing out to somebody, let's say, if you've put together an ad hoc group, you don't want them just running away from cash. You need to categorize and control what the money gets spent on. You get this fuel card to them, you know it's going to be spent on fuel. It's the only thing they can spend it on. Then you have prepaid credit cards. Now this one's a relatively anonymous one. You'll notice that there's no name on there. And there is very little other information on this card. So one of these cards can be handed off to somebody. It can be used in a cashless situation. Again, having options available and contingency plans to mitigate different risks, different situations. If there's a currency crisis going on, there may be a bunch of people that says, we don't accept cash. It's got to be card only. I've seen this late at night at a lot of gas stations. They won't have an attendant, but the self-serve pump is working, and it's card only on a self-serve pump. So you want to have some option that you can use on a self-serve pump, right? Okay, so there's an idea. If you need to buy a bus ticket or you need to buy a cab, you know, a lot of cabs now are going to take a credit card. A lot of Uber stuff is going to take a credit card. One of the things that you'll see advertised in my other videos is Car2Go. Now, Car2Go has to tie into your bank account, but I'll keep a car-to-go card active in my wallet. I can walk up to any of those self-service rental cars and rent that thing off the street right on the spot. Doesn't work in very many cities, but it works in some, and it works generally around low crime areas. But it can get you some distance, and so these are options. Now, when you're looking at distance travel, how much money does it take? I'm looking at about $200 on the get-home type situations on the typical commute distances that I deal with. $200 is going to solve every possible problem that I'm going to run into to get to my base. That's pretty much what I'm looking at, because it's not a long distance, all that kind of thing. If I'm traveling, well, then you need more money. And a lot of the van dweller type people who go online and talk about this type of stuff, they won't do a major relocation road trip with less than $1,000 on there, because they might have to cover some repairs, okay? If you go home and you're no longer mobile, but you can hang out there for a while, that's what the $200 is going to do. It's going to get you to your location. If you need to maintain mobility, you have to factor in the fact that you may need to purchase car repairs, okay? You may have to deal with some emergencies that come up. You don't want to be stuck and stranded someplace. $1,000 for your car dweller, van dweller type people bugging out in a vehicle refugee situation, that tends to be enough to get you from one side of the country to another. One major border you can get from Canada to Mexico, Mexico to Canada, on $1,000 and a reasonable level of comfort, and deal with anything that really comes up. I mean, for the most part, that's going to happen. If you're traveling in an RV, problems could be a little bit bigger. Now, I am a fan of AAA. On the other hand, they don't cover everything on these things. The RV coverage on AAA is a little bit ambiguous sometimes. But a lot of RV dwelling people tell me that they really want to have $2,500 to $3,000 on hand when they road trip RV. One of the guys I follow on this, Nikki Wynn and Gone with the Winds, and then there's Chris Travels, or Chris and Jane Travels, I think it is now. Chris Travels talked about this. I think he was traveling around as a bartender, and when he switched to a bigger motorhome, he decided he needed to have more cash on hand when traveling to deal with these issues. Again, it could be a theft issue, a hijack issue, but we're talking about fuel, breakdowns, any little issues that come up, needing to rent space along the way. You can't always boondock. $2,500 is about what you're going to take along to be in an RV. Boaters who travel internationally by yacht tell me that they really got to travel with $5,000. If you're going to international waters, you got to have $5,000 on board your boat to deal with things that could come up. Fugitive, bug out, we're going to go in the next segment. Alright, so we talk about somebody who, let's say, is a fugitive, but that's a very expensive lifestyle. Okay, and I'm not going to go into that in this video series. I'm going to mainly talk about something that would be affecting you personally, affecting everybody in general, but probably not the fugitive situation. So we are going to be looking at maintaining your moral integrity, legal integrity, social status, avoiding abuse and exploitation situations, and understanding what abuse and exploitation is versus business, and when that consent is not mutual. For example, traveling on trains is a situation where you have overpriced food available on trains, but in theory, depending on how you structure your train tickets, you're allowed to purchase food off the train, get off the train for a little bit, go purchase food, get back on the train, or get back on the next train out of town with your food that you're bringing along. On the other hand, you could get into some exploitation situations, and having money helps avoid those issues. Okay, so having bug out cash on that. One of the series that I've been watching, it's in Spanish, but they have English subtitles, is Narcos. It's about Pablo Escobar and some of the people surrounding him in Colombia in the 1970s and 80s, mostly 1980s. and how when he went into fugitive status, it was much more difficult for him to conduct business. The situation is we want to avoid that by not making enemies during a bug-out process, okay? They had a phrase called plata o plomo, and that has to do with the question of it calls silver or lead, and somebody says, hey, we're going to give you one or the other. Well, the issue is not so much physical silver, although you may be in a situation where that's being used as money, but moderate, normal transaction in business, as opposed to succumbing to reduced moral or legal integrity or social status because of the fact that, hey, you're traveling, it's not your area, somebody's going to charge you a road tax or a street tax or a sidewalk tax, or they want to tax you in some way because you're traveling. That's a no-go. And that's the type of thing that basically, you want to have the ability or the integrity to respond to that with violence, or making violence happen under those circumstances where everybody knows, hey, wait, here's somebody who travels in peace, they pay the way, this never would have been an issue because this person is a reasonable traveler, okay? If you're robbing and stealing and begging your way around the country, well, guess what? No one's going to believe you, and there's going to be an issue. If you travel without money, it's going to be assumed that you may be robbing, begging, and stealing, and that can be a problem. So you want to have bug-out cash on hand, and it has to be something so you can maintain that moral integrity, legal integrity, social status, and understand if those conditions aren't there, why are they not there? Are those reasons legitimate? Are they practical or impractical, and those types of things? But keep your options open, use other options to mitigate circumstances, prepare ahead of time. All the prepping you do is a gift you give for yourself and your loved ones in the future. Whether it's the fuel cards, bug-out cash, things that you've prepared ahead of time, that's what you're looking at in these types of situations.